Thank you. Ah, okay. Sound okay? We good? So, bucket list. It's a term that people hear toss around a lot. And the first time I became really solidly aware of it was with the movie Bucket List. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
With Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson?
Mhm.
Two people, unlikely roommates in a hospital for folks with cancer. And they decided they were going to create a list of the things that they wanted to do before they kicked the bucket. And all of us have an expiration date. We may not know what it is, but in this incarnation, these bodies, we're not going to be here forever. So think about what it is while I'm speaking that you would like to do before your time comes. And I'm sure that a lot of you have already done some of those things, wishes, hopes, dreams, so on. And I think about it every day. What would I like to do? I'm going to be 65 in October. And I think I have no clue how much more time I have. I may not be like your friend. We have a friend who's 89 years old, and she's still kicking, not the bucket, but still, Yvonne K. She's still living full out. And that's what I want to do until the day I die. Again, no idea when that might be. So my bucket list items that Annabella mentioned, interviewing the Dalai Lama, going to Ireland the year I turned 60, and then doing the TEDx talk. What I've learned about completing bucket list items or any manifestation that you want in your life first comes with the idea. The seed is planted in your mind. Wouldn't it be fun to do whatever it is? Wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be like over the moon exciting? And I think that we would not have been given those ideas if they weren't meant to be pursued. Now, it doesn't mean that they're going to turn out exactly the way you think they will, maybe even better than you imagine. So the interview with the Dalai Lama, and some of you have heard this story before, so I'll make that part brief. I became a magazine publisher along with my husband, Michael, in 1988. We published Visions magazine, and some of you may remember it. We did it for 10 years, and I interviewed some of the movers and shakers in the metaphysical world. And I thought I would really love to interview His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I had no clue how that was going to happen, or even if it was going to happen, but I still saw it in front of me. And the good thing, I'm blessed with yaysayers in my life, no naysayers. You know the difference? Okay, so I had cheerleaders, my parents among them. And the way that I created this interview was I first had the thought, and then I used a vision board. Have you all heard of vision boards or made them yourself? So I had pictures of His Holiness on the vision board. And somebody said, well, why don't you take your picture and cut out a picture of yourself and put it next to his, so there's proximity. And I thought, oh, how cool is that? So I had a vision board in my bedroom with His Holiness, among other things on the vision board, and my picture next to his. And then somebody said, well, why don't you write the questions today as if you'll be interviewing him tomorrow? So you'll be ready just in case. So I did that. And then in, I think, 2005, His Holiness came to Rutgers Stadium in New Brunswick. And the people that were organizing it asked me if I'd help promote it. So I said, sure, I'll be glad to. And by the way, is he granting interviews? No, he's not. And I said, well, all right, I'll do it anyway. So I went to this huge stadium, walked around with a tape recorder, interviewing the people that were there in the audience, asking them, what does he mean to you and why are you here? And they told me, and I don't even remember where it was published. At the end of the event, they gave us all postcards with his picture on it. And I taped it to the dashboard of my then car, my Jeep. I still have it in like 3 cars later, or two cars later. It's still not on the dashboard, but it's there, right there with me. So he was present in my mind. He was present on the vision board, and he was present in my car. Fast forward to like late 2007, early 2008, and my friend Greg Schultz, who some of you might know from Pebble Hill, is an American Buddhist, and he's very much involved with the Tibetan rights movement. So he was my ace in the hole. He said he's coming to Philly in July of 2008. I can't guarantee it, but I'll put in a good word for you. So he did. And we were playing that kids game. You're getting warmer, you're getting warmer. I can't guarantee it, but it's looking good. So he was the event producer for the event when His Holiness came to the Kimmel Center. I don't know if anybody there? Anybody from here attend? Yeah. So I forget what day it was. I was at the Exponential Music Festival put on by WXPN, and I was standing there with two friends, and the phone rings, and it's Greg. He says, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "Should I be?" He said, "Yes. Take off July 16th and 17th. You got the interview. And by the way, you're the only journalist in Philadelphia that he granted an interview for." I screamed into the phone. My photographer friend snapped the picture. And I said, "Okay, read, it's okay." And then imposter syndrome kicked in. Anybody know what that is? Like, who are you to do this? What if you mess it up? What if you forget what you're going to ask? What if you get laryngitis? Because I do get that occasionally. And I said, "You would not have been given this opportunity if you hadn't earned it, if you hadn't prepared 20 years in preparation for this event." He says, "I'll call you back tomorrow with the details." So the next day comes and he says, "You still have the interview, but they want the Philadelphia Inquirer as well to send somebody from the Inquirer." Now, you don't think I said, if I can't have an exclusive, I don't want it. I said, "Okay, I'll be there." So fast forward, July 16th comes around, and David O'Reilly from the Philadelphia Inquirer and I were standing outside this Buddhist temple in North Philly. And there were a bunch of other reporters there. And I said, "They don't know that tomorrow at this time, we're going to be with His Holiness, in his room in the Four Seasons." And he said, "I got a new suit for the occasion." And I said, "I got a new dress for the occasion." So Shop of India in New Hope, by the way, in case I'm giving them a plug. So the next day, we walked through the hallway. I think there was, I don't know, Secret Service or something, metal detectors and all that. And I walked into the room, and he's probably standing about as far as you are over there. Tears. I just started crying, and I felt like the floor was going to swallow me up. I went, I walked over, like we met each other kind of in the middle. And when you meet His Holiness, you wear a white silk scarf called a kata. So imagine this, and you hold it kind of like, namaste, prayer pose. He takes it off, blesses it, puts it on you again. He hugged me. I have never experienced, in all the thousands of hugs that I've given and received, a hug like that. So he led us both over to the area where we were speaking. And he was sitting close enough to pat me on the arm, like when he wanted to talk about something, important. So at the end of the event, I had to go back to work. I was working in a psychiatric hospital at the time, Horsham Clinic. And I don't know why, the workaholic that I was, didn't take the whole day off. I went back to work, and I had a deadline. I had to get the article to the Intel at 9:00 that night. So I was writing the article in my head while I was seeing, the patients there. One of the doctors said, "You look like you've been laminated." You're like Dalai Lama, laminated. I was floating like 2 feet off the ground. So wrote the article back and forth with the editor until midnight. Went to bed, woke up at like 3 or 4 in the morning. I was so excited. And I looked online to see if the article was there, and it wasn't. So I called the Wawa that's around the corner from me. I said, "Is the Intel there?" "Yes." "Is there an article about the Dalai Lama?" "Yes." "Is it on the front page?" "Yes." I said, "Okay, good." I rushed over there in PJs, didn't, I put in slippers or flip-flops or something. And I pick up the newspaper, and my heart went thump. The entire, like the first 1/3 of the page was taken up by an article on backyard wrestling, of all things. And it was WrestleManiacs, something like that. One column to the right of it, and then a little bit on the inside. Dalai Lama urges nurturing, next to an article on backyard wrestling. So I called a friend living in California, and he was up late anyway, and it was like midnight there. And I was sobbing on the phone. He says, he said it in more graphic language, but the heck with the article. You got to interview the Dalai Lama. Yeah. So it didn't turn out exactly the way I expected, but I got to interview the Dalai Lama. And the cool thing is, he and his entourage people, sponsors, gave me permission to write as many articles that I wanted from that interview. So if you want to look it up, Edie Weinstein, Dalai Lama, and you'll see a couple of articles there. Hard to imagine. That was in 2008. I think my father had something to do with it. He had died that April. So I think he was from South Philly, and he knew everybody. So I think he had some connections. And the day before the interview, when he was speaking at the Kimmel Center, we're celebrating his birthday. He had just turned 75 that year, I think. And there was this huge sheet cake, and it was wheeled onto the stage, and there was one candle in the middle. And we all sang happy birthday. No, what did we sing? Yeah, we all sang happy birthday. And I don't think it's a Tibetan ritual to blow out a candle. So he started cutting the cake, and people were saying, blow out the candle, blow out the candle. And there was enough for everybody that wanted a piece to have it. Well, I got the last piece, took it with me to the corner, to a corner of the lobby, called my mother and said, guess what you and I are doing? We're having a piece of the Dalai Lama's birthday cake. And she said, I always knew you would do this. So that was one of them. Ireland was a fun kind of trip. I was turning 60 and I said, I want to do something big. I've always wanted to go. Our friend Yvonne waxes poetic about Ireland. And I said, all right, I'm going. And I said, since I'm not a drinker, a typical pub tour wouldn't be fun, much fun for me. And I said, okay, Spirit, you be my tour guide. So in March, I think of that year, I was contacted by this woman whose video I had seen in, I don't remember what year it was, like 2003. Her name is Angie Sullins, and she and her husband Silas created this beautiful video called A Knock at the Door. And you can look that up too. And it's DUIR. And it was fairy imagery and Celtic music. And I had watched it a gazillion times. So Angie, who didn't know me, contacted me and said she's also a greeting card writer, and she had seen some of my writing. Would it be okay if she used one of my pieces on one of her greeting cards? I said, sure, let's talk. And as we were talking, I discovered that she was a tour guide, and she was sponsoring a trip to Ireland in May, like 2 months from there. And I said, okay, let me check my schedule. Let me check my finances. I'll see if I can do it. So other things had happened that told me I was getting closer to the experience. In April that year, I had pneumonia. And I thought, when I was in the hospital, I thought, oh my God, how am I going to walk, a 10-day trip across Ireland? Now, obviously we stayed in hotels and B&Bs and all that, but there was a lot of walking involved. While I was sick, a friend of mine visited with soup and little gifties. And one of them was a notebook that had an elephant on the front. And it said something about bliss, like be your own bliss. After he left, I turned it over. Guess who had created it? Angie and Silas. So I said, okay, I'm going to go. I'm just going to push through and I'm going to go. And 2 weeks prior to the event, I'm on a train coming back from Philadelphia to Doylestown. And I hear somebody sitting a couple rows behind me with an Irish accent. And he's talking to his 2-year-old son who was crying. And I got up, and I usually carried, I didn't put feathers out today. I forgot to bring feathers, but I usually carry feathers with me. So I went to give it to the little boy whose name was David. And I said, would you like a feather? I said, okay, can I give it to your daddy? And he'll hold it for you. Okay. So I start talking to this man. And I'm thinking, he looks so familiar. Where do I know him from? And when he was getting ready to leave, I said, what's your name? He said, Jay Murphy. And I thought, okay, still, I couldn't quite place it. Well, when I got home, I looked it up, and I told him I was going on a trip to Ireland because he said he was from Ireland. And he says, oh, you'll have a wonderful time. When I got home, I did some research. Jay and I had met 5 years earlier at a speaking event called Mo Mondays, Motivational Mondays. And he was talking about living in Ireland and being a musician, and his father was a musician, and he came here. And we were sitting next to each other at dinner. And I said, where does a vegetarian teetotaler go in Ireland? He says, darling, a vegetarian teetotaler doesn't go to Ireland. She goes to Ohio. So I sent him a message. I said, now I know where I knew you from. So Jay is I forget where he lives, but he's still in the area. David is now, I don't know, 8 years old or something. So hold on to the Ohio thing. Okay. So I had a blast in Ireland, hugged my way across, Ireland. And the Irish have a reputation for being very friendly and very affectionate, lots of hugs. And that's part of my TED Talk too. It was about the trip to Ireland. So fast forward, Ireland. TED Talk. In 2008 or 2009, I heard my first TED Talk with Elizabeth Gilbert. Do you know who she is? Eat, Pray, Love. So her TED Talk was about creativity. You can look that up too. TED Talk, Elizabeth Gilbert, Creative Muse or something like that. And I said, I'll have what she's having. I really want to do this. And I've been a speaker 30, 40, a long time. And I said, how do I do this thing? Because the TED Talk is not this. It's not spontaneous. It's not extemporaneous. It's scripted. It's planned. There are no cue cards. There is no script to read from. There is no teleprompter. It's got to sound like this, but I've got to, memorize it. And I had no idea how to get in the door. So I started watching other people's TED Talks, noticing how they presented themselves, listening to the ideas. And TED stands for technology, I don't know if it's education or entertainment, and design. So they call it ideas worth spreading. Could be on just about any subject, but there needs to be some kind of backing for it, some kind of research, some kind of statistical proof that what you're saying isn't just a story. So Lisa Graham, I don't know if any of you know her. You might know her. She was the Lisa is a teacher. She focuses on anti-bullying programs. She has her own podcast. She was the engineer producer of Yvonne's podcast, and she had done a TED Talk. And I said, "How'd you get it? What did it take?" So she put me in touch with her coach, Cesar Cervantes, who's a comedian and a TED. He's three times on the TED stage. And she says, "You got to work with him." So I made a phone call. We chatted for a while, and I said, "All right, I need to commit time and money and energy," because I think somebody had told me that when you commit to a TED Talk, be prepared to put in 1,000 hours of preparation. So this was in October of 2021. So I said, "All right, I'm in." And we had our individual sessions. We had our group coaching sessions. He had a mastermind group, and he helps people create their own talk and their own pitch, like a pitch letter. So I submitted to something like 12 stages, and the first one that said yes was in Ohio. Okay, it was in Lima, Ohio. And for those who watch the TV show Glee, do you remember that show? Yeah. That's where, it wasn't really filmed in Lima, but that was the location in the show where the high school was. So in April of last year, I got the thumbs up from them, from the TEDx stage in Ohio. And then the preparation got really intense. And they gave us 3 coaches. One was a speaking coach, one was a writing coach, and one was a lifestyle coach, because it is extremely stressful. It's like an endurance test, an emotional endurance test, because it had me questioning everything. Am I articulate enough? Can I stand there for 17 minutes with my senior brain? And am I going to remember this? And just like with the Dalai Lama interview, what if I get laryngitis? Because I have COPD also. So breathing was challenging. Am I going to be able to stand up without my hiking pole, my buddy, for 17 minutes? And I committed to myself to only go somewhere that was within driving distance, because I didn't want to fly during the pandemic. So 9 hours. It wasn't horrible. So my best friend says, "Road trip, I'm going with you. You don't have a choice. We're going to do this." So I practice a lot. I practice on Skype, not Skype. God, I haven't used Skype in ages, but that tells you how fast technology is moving. I practiced on Zoom with people. I practiced in front of the camera myself. I bought a little red rug, because on most TED stages, they have a red circle. So this was my practice rug. The TED stage in Ohio didn't have a red circle, but I still have it there. I still walk across it. It's in my dining room. And the weirdest and the most effective. So if you ever have to memorize something, do it in your sleep. Every time I do lucid dreaming, so anytime I would wake up, I say, "Okay, let's run it through in your head," and I would fall back to sleep. And then there were times that I would dream the talk. So that was a seed planting moment as well. Now, the thing that is common in every manifestation that I've created is surrender. You plant this, just like the Nemo song, you plant the seeds, no clue whether, I knew I was going to do the TED Talk, but I had no idea where, I had no idea when. I met the most amazing people who shared the stage with me from all over the country, that had poured their hearts out on stage as well. And it was all about, okay, I'm going to somehow see this happening, but I'm not sure how. And I'm just trusting. Now, Ken will validate this. I had a conversation with him about how I had a message. Now I get messages in my dreams, I get messages in meditation. And it was something about, I'm doing this for God's glory. And I went, okay. I said, that's language is way too Christian for this nice Jewish girl, interfaith minister. And I said, I don't quite get that. So I said, all right, can you elaborate? And the message was, I wouldn't have given you this opportunity if I didn't think you could do this. And the I was, God, goddess, whatever, whoever. And whenever I hear that voice, it's a gender neutral voice. I don't identify it as male or female. And I hear it here and here. And I said, okay, you got to get me. I said, you brought this, what's the saying, that if God brings you to it, God will get you through it. I said, all right, I've done my part, you do yours, because I'm not going to do this. So when we got there, we had rehearsal time the day before, like a dress rehearsal the night before, and then we had the opportunity the next morning to practice on stage. I was able to kind of roll it out, and it was fine. When the time came to actually do the talk, they clipped a microphone, lavalier mic here, and this is actually what I was wearing, and it went down my back, a little box, and I said to the coach, please make sure you unmute the mic when I go on stage. And because it was live streamed as well, just like we're doing here. And she said, oh, no worry, they'll handle it at the sound booth. Well, I get on stage and I start talking, and I'm 4 minutes into my talk. And she walks out on stage. Amy walks out on stage, pulls me back. She says, you were right. They didn't unmute you. You got to start all over again. So I walk back and I start from the beginning. And I said, okay. The cool thing about it was that one of the other coaches teaches public speaking. She said, can I use that as an example in my class for how to gracefully deal with oops? So I don't know whether she did, but that was fun. When it was over, I cried. All of us, when everybody walked off the stage, they walked into the green room where we were all waiting. Everybody cried because it was such, and the word, I love the word ineffable. It's, it's a very spiritual word, like it's indescribable, this experience. So if you're so inclined to do this, come talk to me and I'll put you in touch with my coach. And if you're willing to put in the commitment and the time and the energy, it's life-changing. Absolutely is. So Jennifer, do you want to play the first 5 minutes of it? Or again, on YouTube, Overcoming the Taboo of Touch, Edie Weinstein. It's a lot of fun. And what I'm asking of you is you share it. If you find value in it, you share it with the world. That's how it becomes, a viral sensation, which would be marvelous. Because I would love for people, bless you, I would love for people to feel more comfortable with safe, nurturing touch by consent. So at the end of the talk, I shared a song. It was written by singer-songwriter Fred Small. I don't know if any of you are familiar with his work. Fred was a civil liberties lawyer. That was his first career. Then he became a folk singer, social justice focused. And now he is, I was a Unitarian or Unity minister in Massachusetts. So the song is called The Hug. And it's a story of a psychologist or psychiatrist who worked in a psychiatric hospital who got fired from his job for hugging his patients with consent. He saw it as therapeutic. His boss saw it as, he talked about it being, any deviation from standard medical practice can get us sued. Your conduct is lax and lewd. So look up Fred Small, The Hug. So the sing-along part, a call and response that I'm going to ask you to join in on, if you'd like, goes like this. When I sing the words, I want to hug, I'm going to ask you to sing it back. Ready? I want to hug when we say hello. I want to hug when it's time to go. I want to hug because I want you to know I'm awfully fond of you. I want to hug. What a wonderful feeling. Want to hug to feel you squeeze and want to hug. It certainly seems like the natural thing to do. So I'm going to ask you to put your arms around yourself. Audience here, an audience out in cyberland, and imagine the last hug you received. And then imagine the hug that you've been craving. It may be from somebody that you haven't seen in a very long time. Just imagine hugging them, sharing hugs with them. Okay, and then come back to the present moment and feel free to ask any questions, make any comments. You can continue hugging yourself if you want.